Hi, my name is Jesus Guzman, and I chose Competency 002 for my demonstration for this video. So, competencies, best way I can describe it are standards or alignments that a teacher uses to be guided to execute their lesson or to help students learn what they need to learn as far as TEA standards. So for Competency 002, and I quote, is understand concepts, principles, and best practices related to the development of foundational reading skills and demonstrate knowledge of research and evidence-based assessment and instructional practices to promote all students' development of grade level foundational reading skills. That's a mouthful. And with competencies, you want to get it word for word, straight out of the book, word for word statement. And my job here is to simplify that for you. So all that means is us as educators need to understand how children learn their early reading skills. And it is our job to use teaching methods and assessments that are proven to help students become strong readers. So our goal ultimately is to help students become stronger readers with three concepts. And we're gonna go over those three concepts and break them down for those of you that don't know what they stand for, or if you're not in the educational field. And so some examples of this competency is having your scholars or students know their letters and the sounds they make, which ties in with phonics, hearing and playing with sounds and words. So not necessarily reading a word, but listening to the word and making out what sounds are in that word or letter and blending it together to come up with your solution. Being able to blend these sounds together, it ties in with phonemic awareness, which is one of our third options that we're going to be going into today. These are the building blocks of reading. Without this foundational block, reading becomes very hard for students later on. So even if they might get past in pre-K, kinder, and first grade, they'll start to show signs of complications with their reading skills as they move on to the next grade and so forth. So for number one, we're going to go into a little bit about phonic. So phonic is teaching children which letters make which sounds and how to blend them to read the words, right? So for example, a teacher might write the word cat on the board, right? She can point to a letter. I can point to a letter and say, what sound does the letter C make? And of course it's k, 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 right? Putting the emphasis on the letter. That way the students can grasp and learn what you are emphasizing, right? Move on to your next letter. What sound does the letter A make? Ah, ah. And then of course, what sound does the letter T make? T, t, t. And so when you blend it together, cat, cat, cat. Slowly blending these words is enabling the teacher to use explicit step-by-step instructions on how to help students connect letters to sounds and to evidently read the word completely. So again, which ties in with phonics, which is an important element to developing your reading skills. The next example, number two, that I can provide is tied in with phonological awareness. And phonological awareness basically means listening to the sounds in words, right? So notice how here on the first example for phonics, I wrote out the word and we broke down the word by sounds and by letters and blended it together. Here we are listening. So listening is very important when it comes to phonological awareness, right? And so phonological phonological awareness, right? So the word that we're going to be using for our second section is banana. Now, before writing the word banana, you want to let your students know to say the word out loud, right? Get comfortable with the word banana, banana. And you can even have the students clap to the syllables of the word, right? Banana, right? Once you have your students listen and break down the word into sections, then you can write out the word, right? Banana, banana, right? This way, as an educator, you're helping the students hear and break apart sounds in words, which is a key for early reading skills. All right, our third and final section, which I think is also a vital key element to developing your reading skills, is phonemic awareness. All right, phonemic awareness is working with individual sounds, and that's the difference between phonemic and phonological. Phonological, you're listening to the sounds in the words. Phonemic, you're working with the individual sounds. And so what do we mean by that? Is being able to have a word up on the board and changing one part of the word to change the meaning of that word completely, and the spelling, of course, right? So one example that I'll use is the word map, right? Map. Have your students say the word out loud. Have them say it out in unity. Map, right? Maybe they already know how to spell it. Maybe they already know how to sound it out, right? Once we got that figured out, we write your word map on the board. And of course, you can go through your first part of what we went through here earlier today, which is phonics. So you can have them sound out the letters, right? Map, right? But what's important about phonemic awareness is once they figure that out, how do they interpret whenever you change a certain section of the word, right? So instead of map, we have trap, right? So you allow them to recognize, or teach them to recognize, that changing one part of the word changes the whole meaning of the word, and of course the spelling, right? Trap, trap, right? When the original word was map. All right. By doing this, by changing the letter, thus changing the sound, you change the word completely. This allows teachers to help students manipulate the sounds in words, right? So when you're able to manipulate a word, change certain sections, and change the meaning of it completely, it helps students with their decoding. And decoding basically means being able to break apart words, change them into something else, which ties in with phonemic awareness. It straightens their decoding. It helps them with their reading. So now when they are running into words like map, trap, tap, they're able to identify not just that the last two letters remain the same, but that the first section of the word is being changed, thus changing the whole meaning of the word. And so there you go. That's Competency 002, which again involves phonics, our first section, phonological awareness, listening to sounds and words, and of course, phonemic awareness, which we just went over, working with the individual sounds. Competency 002 was something I scored very low for my testing, my pre-assessment, so I decided to focus on that and straighten that a little bit. Competency is demonstrated when a teacher clearly teaches children how to sound work in words by listening to sounds, changing the sounds, and of course connecting the sounds to letters and being able to recognize that.